You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 193, Amon Amarth, hosted by Dan Terry.
It's not why the songs are about Vikings, but it is why the album sounds so good.
Buddy Reno.
They probably liked it, so they just kept listening to it over and over.
And Joseph Wren, and it sounds really fucking good.
It sounds really fucking good, that's right.
Presented by discussmetal.com. For whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, he'll possess the power of Doom.
Oh, I guess that means I'm worthy, because I play a lot of Doom.
Then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe, that is Dan, that is Buddy.
Yo, what up?
Who else is going to talk about Viking Metal other than the Doomhammer in-house?
I just want to go on record and say that I absolutely look more like a Viking than both of you right now. Just
true.
So you know.
No argument. I don't even need to take a picture and prove it.
I mean, I'm missing arms. I have huge bloody gashes all over my face. I mean, it's been a rough week, guys. It's been a really rough week.
I mean, you could have left it at the beard, because I got nothing, and I can't.
I'm thinking about shaving my beard, actually.
It'll be back in 2 days if you do.
I'm a little bit less Eric the Red and a lot more Santa Claus right now.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm not as into that so much. If you ever saw that Tim Allen movie, The Santa Claus, I feel like that's what's happening to me. I keep trying to lose weight, and then every time I do, like, my stomach just grows back. It's like nothing I can really do about it.
You're the
And
one that
my hair's
decided to
turning
wear
gray.
red flannel this week.
Well, I mean, Santa doesn't wear flannel, right? Right?
He does if he's cold.
Guys, right? Right?
We're talking about Amon Amarth this week because who doesn't want to listen to 11 records about Vikings?
I think before this, you didn't know that you wanted to listen to 11 records about Vikings.
When I listen to what I personally consider to be awesome, fun, but arguably novelty metal, I think of Ailstorm, I think of pirate metal. Then I listen to Amon Amarth, and now I have Viking metal. I feel like I can listen to all the fantasy metal that has ever existed and be forever entertained, and Dan is going to be not satisfied because it's not heavy enough.
I mean, I think it's not heavy enough. Amon Amarth, though, those guys are heavy enough. They're very, very. You want me to put the hammer down? Because they do. I mean, as long as your definition heavy is more like melodic death metal and less like, I don't know, like suffocation or something like that. But Amon Amarth's got it where it counts. I feel like their music is actually more powerful because it's more melodic. I think it blends what they're talking about together really well. I think having that epic, melodic, almost power metal tinge to their playing allows them to play at a very, very, very good speed and actually can make you feel like you are in a battlefield while you're listening. And they do that very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, especially because, like, you know, it's Viking stories and stuff are always talking about, you know, glory, Valhalla, you know, living for the battle and everything. And so their music definitely backs that up. It gives you this, the way that they, you know, create their riffs and their soundscapes just really plays into that whole atmosphere. And definitely, yeah, it makes you feel like what they're talking about with that glory, you know, type of mentality.
And all joking aside, I know there are people that take Viking history very seriously. Please accept my apology if I gave you the impression that I think Viking mythology is in some way fantasy, because that is definitely not my intention. At its core, this is melodic, but it's also intense and up to speed, and just like an army, it is trying to mow you down with its intensity, and it does not leave you hanging. If you're looking for technical death metal, you're looking for guitar solos and insert all the melodic qualities that you can possibly take, you're going to get what you're looking for with this band.
There's even some surprise new metal in an album.
It's not it.
Don't spoil the surprise,
Doomhammer. Come on, man.
Surprise! You can't get away from it.
They are no more new metal than Mickey Mouse. I don't know, for all I know, Mickey Mouse could be new metal as fuck, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, we can talk about that track when we get to that album. But
well, before we talk about Doomhammer versus the world, I want to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. So if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening, and now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
No, I'm not. You guys are just going to figure out 5-star reviews yourself. Just, click on the thing and leave us the words and on the messages. I'm kidding. If you want to leave us a review on whatever podcast app allows you to do so. If you just feel like telling us that we did a good job, you can always send us an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. And I just want to thank you guys who share the episodes in all of the Facebook groups that I get kicked out of for sharing episodes. So you guys are awesome. And I just want to thank you very, very much for that. And I have a list. I have an actual list of people that are awesome. And they are our loyal Patreon subscribers, which includes the likes of Brandon Miranda, Ken Zapla, Tantalized Funyuns, Jeremy Prince, Josh Moser, David Brown, Samuel Woodward, Brian Dean, Kiki Kuti, Do You Love Me?
I do love you.
Lance Allagood,
The King of Metal.
Alexander, Patrick Asplund, and Jeffrey De Los Santos.
The actual Mac.
You guys are the music makers. You are the dreamers of the dreams. Thank you so much for helping us out, paying our bills, helping us buy awesome microphones. The podcast sounds significantly better than it used to, and most of that is due to your guys' contributions. So we thank you very much for that.
Also, shout out to Heil Sound and their glorious Finn microphones. If you like the way the podcast has been sounding, let us know.
I know. I even have one of those at home. It's pretty much the coolest thing I have in my house. I mean, besides my wife and kids and all that. Those are people.
I need to give you one of them microphones. I've only got a penny line in on my headset. That's like $20.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could totally not tell the difference. Yeah, totally. Yep. That's the narrative.
That part out.
That's the narrative we're sticking with.
So, Dan, tell me about Amon Amarth.
Amon Amarth. What is there to say about Amon Amarth that hasn't already been said?
It's a lot of songs about Vikings.
Holy shit. It's funny, though, because the name Amon Amarth actually isn't Viking. It's actually from Lord of the Rings. So I'm kind of flashing back to Blind Guardian here a little bit. But it is the Sindarin name of Mount Doom, Amon Amarth.
It's kind of hilarious that, that they would make their name and then saying nothing about Lord of the Rings at all.
The only thing I can guess is that they started the band and they were going to just be a Tolkien metal band. And then the next day they heard Blind Guardian and were like, well, shit. Now we have to find our own thing.
I know what we have to do now.
Yeah, we need to, send ourselves from the Golden Hall or something. But yeah, so Amon Amarth, they are a Swedish melodic death metal band. A lot of people like to call them Viking Metal. I personally really don't like that title because I'm one of those people that doesn't feel like lyrical content justifies the actual genre name. So I tend to find even genres like gore grind to be kind of dumb just because it's at the end of the day it's just grindcore. And with Viking Metal, even though it's funny because I feel like a lot of the Viking Metal bands are kind of more black metal based anyway. Whereas Amon Amarth is pretty far away from that as far as being a melodic death metal band. Vocals are deep. These albums are very, very well produced. They're very punchy. And they definitely fit in that melodic death metal vein really well. And to be honest, I actually prefer Amon Amarth's version of melodic death metal to a more traditional Swedish melodeath type of band. I don't feel like they do a lot of the tropes that a lot of the other bands do. A lot of their melodies are more universal. So whenever you actually hear the riffs, especially later on in their career, you're not immediately Gothenburg death metal right there. They don't really do that. And that's probably the most refreshing thing about Amon Amarth is that they play death metal like you'd be familiar with, but they just add melody into it without it necessarily being the tropey melodic death metal thing. So I'll get off of that. I'll get off of that high horse, but yeah.
I get it, dude. You're not a fan of subgenres because you can take subgenres too far. If I wake up tomorrow and start a punk band that sings about ice cream, are we ice cream punk? You might be if all you sing about is ice cream.
I mean, if I can sell more t-shirts calling myself ice cream punk, I will do that. So this is just a preference thing. But these guys have been around for forever, basically. They've been around since 1992. They did not end up getting a debut album off the ground until 1998. So, cue in, a billion demos that they probably made and EPs that we're not going to talk about because who has the time for that? But yeah, Amon Amarth they're fantastic. The first time I heard this band, I heard them on a compilation. It was the song Cry the Blackbirds, and the song just absolutely blew me away with how intense it was. And then within I think even before the song was over, was already sending Buddy a text message being like, Amon Amarth, Cry the Blackbirds, you need to listen to this right now. And, Buddy came back about, 3 minutes later, was like, holy shit, like, this is awesome. Yeah.
I remember we were like freaking out when we heard that song, because that's still like, maybe it's also because that's the first song I heard, but that one will just live on repeat forever, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. As soon as Cry the Blackbirds comes on and they yell charge, like, you are in it. Whatever you're doing, you are now 210% doing whatever you're doing.
Is this like a Faith No More situation? As soon as you hear the first note of epic, you stop what you're doing and start being fucking much. Epic?
I'd probably be more likely to do it during Amon Amarth, but yeah. I
have to agree with that.
This band is unfuckable with, if that makes sense.
Is that even a sentence?
It is now. But they are. Like, I'm not going to be able to objectively criticize this band because they've kind of just been rock solid throughout their career. So if you're listening to this podcast strictly to hear me talk shit about bands, you might want to skip this episode, because I don't have a lot of shit to talk. I guess let's just get into it, guys. I mean, we got a lot of albums to get through. This band is pretty prolific these days, and so we're going to jump back to their humble beginnings.
1998, Once Sent from the Golden Hall.
I had never actually listened to this album. For some reason, I just hadn't dove that far back into their back catalog. I think I had before really bad versions of these that were not super high quality. And so now that we got streaming services, a lot of these are much higher quality and a lot easier to listen to now. I was super blown away by how amazing this record actually sounded compared to what I remember it sounding like. It's freaking awesome. If anything, you could levy at it, it's that some of it kind of ran together a little, but it was super epic throughout the entire, track length. It was crazy how awesome this album is.
Yeah, I have to agree for the most part. This is really, really creative riffing. Vocals are not quite the same as what you were going to get from Amon Amarth later on. They're a little bit more raspy, a little bit, I want to say black metal, but just kind of more of a mid-ranged, like thrash metals, growl, scream. He wasn't full on death metal yet, and his vocals were not unlike, Opeth's vocals around that time. If you're thinking like My Arms, Your Hearse era Opeth, or even before that, like Morning Rise, Orchid, very similar. And also speaking of Opeth, they actually, so for One Sent from the Golden Hall, actually features Martin Lopez on drums, who was the drummer for Opeth for a long time. It's his only Amon Amarth album that he's on, but he plays the drums. They sound good.
He does his job.
He plays the metal drums real good. This record is really cool. It does sound like a debut album in the sense that it is somewhat riff salad. There's a lot going on. When you're writing your first album and it's in kind of a melodic death metal style like this, you've probably written 700 riffs up to that point in your life, and this is your big shot, to put out your first record to present your version of heavy metal to the world. And so you're going to put probably 549 of those 700 riffs that you wrote into that first album, and that is a little bit what happened here. The riffs are great, the ideas are great. They're not super skilled songwriters yet, but this is still monumentally good. And I think that there is a little bit of a correlation to how long the band had existed prior to recording this, to really, really get their skills. Because I feel like here in America, you start a band, you've written 3 songs, and then you're out recording your demo or your debut album within like a year or two of becoming a band. Whereas these guys had grounded out for 6-7 years prior to recording this record. So you're getting a more well-seasoned band, even though it's a debut record. And I think that's largely why it's as good as it is. And of course, they kick in with the Viking theme almost immediately on this record that's going to follow them through. I'm not going to get too deep into the lyrics because a lot of this stuff I actually have to have like a thesaurus on hand because I have to like actually know what they're talking about as far as the mythology goes. Because like Nile, they are just all about it. They're like really, really into it. And sometimes you have to like familiarize yourself with the actual terminology that's being used.
It's 1998. We're listening to Riff Salad, play the fucking guitars. It's great if what you want to hear is an old school sounding, thrash influenced melodic metal record. The vocals are old school enough. They're not quite death metal, but clearly we're not trying to be pretty with our presentation.
Yeah, I mean, Jonah hasn't, or Johan. Yeah, Johan. Let's start that over.
Go ahead.
Johan hasn't really, like come into his own as to, what he wants to sound like yet. So that's why, he kind of sounds like other bands, in that time period, which, nothing wrong with that at all because it still sounds great. It's just a solid listen. I was going somewhere with that and it's completely gone.
I'm not listening to this record looking for my life to be changed by the melodic metal. I'm listening to this because it's heavy, it's got those thrash tendencies, it has riffs. What else do you want?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could say anything, really negative about the record. It's a great, solid listen, which I think is going to be a constant theme that we're going to see throughout every single album in this discography.
Yeah, I love this. I love this record. I actually, so after, obviously the first record that I got by this band was with Oden on our side. I think we all did. But I found this record for, I think, like $2 in the metal section at Slackers in the mall. And
old school.
Yeah, I picked that thing up. It was $1.99. I still got it, and it's the original version. And it blew my mind. But there's something the buddy was saying about like it being lower quality. I think the original versions actually do sound shittier than the stream versions. I think the ones we're hearing on stream are actually like remastered in some capacity, and so they sound a little bit better.
That would make sense because it looks like Once Sent from the Golden Hall had a 2009 remastered edition.
That's probably what was being streamed, yeah, because the CD version I have doesn't really sound very good.
Yeah, because I remember like being turned off by this album and just kind of sticking with their newer material. And so, but I was listening, I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys know you're supposed to get that thing mastered for CD before you release it, right? You can't just copy the cassette tape using it.
And then
we got to redo this.
Yeah. And then Joe just, ended up with like a fucking broadsword through his chest just there.
Are we ready for the Avenger?
Oh man, the original Avenger. Notice it's not Avengers. You only need one.
Right. The Doomhammer.
Only need one.
1999. I'm happy with some dark metal riffs with double bass drumming and songs about Vikings. How does everybody else feel about that?
I mean, that is kind of the name of the game here. So you've got a sophomore record by Amon Amarth, recorded in the exact same studio with the exact same producer as the last record. So, you already kind of have a winning formula right out of the gate. This record actually sounds a little bit more raw to me in the vocal department and stuff. It seems like maybe they were trying to do something a little bit different, but for the most part, if you liked Once Sent from the Golden Hall, you're going to like The Avenger.
It's also another great album, and, I won't say it's like B-sides from Once Sent from the Golden Hall, but it came out so close, to Once Sent that, there probably were definitely some ideas that carried over from the last album. But again, it's another like super solid release with Jonah maybe, or Johan. I'm going to screw that up like every time. Johan and the Big Hammer. But with him, still continuing to trying to find what he wants to sound like, and set himself apart, which I think happens more like around the fourth album or so. But yeah, it's still super solid.
It's a melodic metal band. If the B-sides sound like the songs on the previous record, I'm happy with that. I've heard worse B-sides than a melodic metal band doing more of the same.
Yeah, totally. And apparently during this time, the band was in some sort of feud with the band Hammerfall. And the band ended up making a statement saying, I guess like Hammerfall said that Amon Amarth was like ripping off of a bunch of other bands and were like completely unoriginal. So then Amon Amarth responded with like, look, if anything on this record you think sounds like another band, just know that we didn't do it on purpose. And it's funny because I can't think. I mean, obviously, I wasn't plugged into the Swedish heavy metal scene at that time, but I haven't heard a whole lot of bands that sound exactly like Amon Amarth. I think Amon Amarth is really good at sounding like themselves, almost to a fault. But I don't necessarily hear any other bands that I'm aware of that sound like Amon Amarth.
What you have heard, though, is an infinite number of metal bands that have this same general feel.
Yeah.
So are we really going to focus on Amon Amarth for ripping off a bunch of other bands? How many of those bands didn't sound like the other bands playing at the show that night?
Well, I think it was just some shit talk between bands. I don't think that there's a whole lot really to pull out of that. I just wanted to mention it that they had been accused of basically being a copycat band, which I think is super weird because like we grew up during metalcore, which was like the age of copycat bands.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really hit. It really doesn't hit me here in the States too much. Like, okay, yeah, because there's a lot of times where I like still listen to the rip-off bands anyway because maybe they do that thing I like better than the band that does the thing that I that I like. I've run into that tons of times where I end up liking the rip-off band more than the original band.
Yeah, sometimes the copycat's got some banger tracks.
Exactly.
You never know.
Exactly. I gotta listen to the whole record 3 times just to make sure.
Buddy, can I get you to lift that hammer up for a second, please?
Hammer!
Just hold it up over your head for a second. 2001, The Crusher. Drop the hammer! I think I can take a break while you two talk about this record for the next 7.5 hours.
Well, I don't know about 7.5 hours. I mean, The Crusher is where they kind of start changing their sound a little bit, and they become just a little bit more brutal, I think, than they had been before. I think this album has a little bit more death metal, like traditional death metal ideas in it. The drumming is faster, the riffs are heavier. It could also just be that they're being recorded better here. This is where the vocals start going in a little bit more of an extreme direction. Still 100% recorded at the same studio. Actually, you know what? Let me double check that. Okay, yeah. What was I even thinking? Of course, it was recorded at the Abyss and done by Peter Togtugren, who does all of the who did like all the early Amon Amarth records. So yeah, same thing. But like the band obviously was going for a much more brutal sound on this record. I think the riffs are better. I think this is where they stop being a riff salad band and start actually composing songs out of metal, picking the best riffs that they come up with, the best ideas that they can come up with. And then you get some actually like really, really memorable melodic lead guitar work on this record. Really stands out more than their other stuff. Whereas I feel like on the other albums, as good as they were, there wasn't a big enough distinction between maybe the lead guitar work and the rest of the guitars. Everything just kind of muddled together, and it still sounded good, but like here there's like a clear separation for solos and just really, really, really cool leads and transitions and changes and other technical to guitar shit that I don't know anything about. But like basically the songs are just better. They stick with you. They're more memorable. They're more hooky than they were before, but also heavier.
It's not just a pile of riffs, but riffs that breathe long enough for you to remember what the song sounded like the next time you listen to it.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not much I can say that would be different than what you guys have already said. It's another super solid release, and yeah, I can definitely say I agree that this is when they're starting to compose songs more. Track like song lengths are still up there. Like I think all their albums have been mostly like 40 something minutes, which is almost on the verge of too long, but
yeah,
it never is. It's just right for these guys, and they seem to stick to that. And yeah, it's another solid release. I don't know what else we could say about it.
And I know it's old school, but I think it's perfectly acceptable for metal songs to be longer than your standard pop song. If you want to put out 5 minutes, 6, 7, 8-minute songs, that's okay. That means you hopefully composed it and allow the song to breathe. There gets to be a center section with some melodic changes, and I'm going to play a lead for the next 4 minutes, but that's okay when you're talking about classic metal songs. So I'm glad to see that same composition in 2001 still happening, and for the most part, this one just sounds like another record that's much more focused, but it still sounds like Amon Amarth.
I think that this was the first step towards the more modern sound that they would get more popular for here in just a couple of albums. Because, whenever we jump into the next record, Versus the World.
You got to read the whole title, dude. 2002, Amon Amarth versus the World.
All right, fair enough.
Let's play.
Versus the World is much more the Amon Amarth that we know today. This is where the songs kind of slow down a little bit. They get that kind of like, I like to call it like a march almost, instead of like a full-on run. This is where like, go, and the vocals kind of start having that swing to them, like into the riffs. I think the word I'm looking for is groove, but it's not quite a groove.
It's their own groove that they've kind of defined as what they sound like. It's like, this is where their sound starts to really shine through. And it does have to do with that, that slower pace, that march that you're talking about, without them, having to go breakneck speed all the time.
Vocals are much more focused and deep on this one. Like, this is where not only are the vocals super deep, but they're actually, due to like how deep they are, they're actually more understandable, much easier to follow than they were before when it was more growl based. Now with it just being that kind of guttural grunt, dude can actually speak slower because the songs are slower, and so you actually get a much more clear picture of what's going on in the actual songs. This is almost a night and day difference, and I think it has a lot to do with they went with a different producer on this album, a different studio, and they were able to pull a different side of the band out that we hadn't had before, because I think the first 3 records, it was just come in, plug in, everybody's got their own assigned seating, their own everything set up.
And go.
Yeah, we're gonna do another Amon Amarth record, and it's gonna sound exactly like this. So this is an out of your comfort zone, different producer, different studio, different ideas, different setup, and they really, really pull the modern Amon Amarth out of it.
It's a welcome change when you go from the classic sounding metal songs to a slightly slower pace, almost like a sloppy cassette tape dirge. It's like they're playing 5 beats per minute slower than they want to, but they're doing that because somebody is telling them to slow down and let the song breathe. It works for them because you can hear everything they're doing.
Well, and what's great is by doing that more often, then when they do want to take it to the next level, it has that much more oomph to it,
I'd like to quote Dan from probably 25 years ago. In order for you to have a song that is fast, you must first have it next to a song that is slow. Otherwise, it is not fast or slow. It is just the same pace.
It arrives precisely when it means to.
Unless it's Napalm Death. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot more else to say about this record. I mean, it's a melodic death metal. You know what? I have to make a special point. I really liked the part in the album where he talked about Vikings. And I'm not even
part.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying it to like be like mean or anything like that. It's just that like this is one of those bands where they're going to always give you the thing that you want, as long as by whatever circumstances you became a fan of this band. If you like anything that they did, you're never going to get an Amon Amarth album that you're going to be like, well, that fucking sucked. You're never gonna have that reaction, because they're always going to continue to do the thing that what got you into the band in the first place. So whether it's the deep vocals, or it's the Viking thing, or it's the melodic guitar work, or it's all of those things, they're going to continue to do it. So it's like at this part of the discussion where the albums might seem like they're bleeding together, and I just want to make a distinction. Even if we don't spend a lot of time on a record, it does not mean that record's not really fucking great. It's just that they kind of all are.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, just open open the thing, open your, collection or whatever, pick one of their albums and you're going to have a great time. Doesn't matter. Just listen to something.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be fun. Yeah, better than the other side of the coin there with the pirate metal. I'm still a little bit bitter that Ailstorm never really got any track better than Drink. That's still my favorite by them. And
have you not listened to Mexico?
I have not.
So
Because I listened to a bunch of other stuff by
It's a
them.
waste of time.
So what you're saying is you're
Disappointed.
misinformed.
It's a huge waste of time. If that ain't the pot calling the kettle black, I don't know what is.
2004, Fate of Gnomes.
Norns.
Norns.
That is an R.
Yeah, Fate of Norns.
Yep. The kerning on that's a bit weird.
Did you guys want another record by Amon Amarth that has a march type feel to it with some riff-tastic guitar work and some slightly slower double bass than what it should be? And just in case I haven't sold you on this idea yet, stay with me on this one. Vikings.
I mean, if you got a theme, go with it, I have to read this quote from their lead singer specifically about this album, where he's basically confirming exactly everything that I just said about the last one, where he says, "The sound is more mature than on previous albums. I think the foundation for this sound started when we changed studios from Abyss to Brno, when we got working with Brno Paulson. We improved the sound a lot for this album. We were able to take all the instruments. We were able to make all the instruments work better together and still make them prominent one by one in the production as well. We were also able to keep the heaviness and brutality we need to be Amon Amarth."
I'd like to take this time to congratulate Amon Amarth for continuing to be Amon Amarth.
Yes.
We
definitely.
appreciate that you continue to make records that don't just sound like Amon Amarth, but they are Amon Amarth.
Yeah, this record's great. Fate of Norns, it's a classic. It's one of my favorites.
Absolutely.
I'm a really big fan of Fate of Norns with Oden on our side and Twilight of the Thunder God. Those are kind of like the Viking trilogy for me as a lilistener. And
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. So yeah, I mean, I think Fate of Norns is fucking great. What else do you want me to say?
Do you really want me to skip
that
the
would
next
make
two
sense
records?
because- No, you can't skip the next two.
No, we don't skip. We don't skip.
We never skip Amon Amarth. When it comes on, you listen to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, why this would be, I know these three are kind of my favorites as well, because we heard with Oden on our side, bought it, loved it, wanted more, so we picked up Fate of Norns, loved it, wanted more, then we waited for the new album to come out and picked that one up as well. And then, life happens.
Yep.
But you keep in touch.
There's always an Amon Amarth album waiting for you when you come back. So that brings us to the kind of the first record that I ever heard by the band.
2006, with Oden on our side.
Oh man, was he ever?
Oh, man. I think we heard Cry the Blackbirds, you and I, Dan.
Yep.
And I think the next day or that day, we drove up to Best Buy looking for this thing and got that double digipack
Yep.
thing.
I got one and you got one.
Yeah.
Yep. So this was another studio and another producer, which I think is why this album is just a hair catchier than what we had ever really gotten from the band before. These songs actually have choruses. They're not like la 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 singing choruses or whatever. But if you look at a song like Runes to My Memory, which has an actual chorus, and you look at even with Oden on our side, follows a very verse chorus verse song structure. It's a little different from melodic death metal, and normally when I'd be explaining all this stuff, I would say and that's why they suck and that's why they sold out and I hate this band. But that's not actually how I feel about it. I feel like when a band is telling stories like Amon Amarth is telling stories, I think having that narrative structure mixed with a more traditional song structure really works, especially whenever you're kind of slowing the songs down anyway, in order to be a little bit more mid-paced. I don't have a lot of love for mid-paced metal, but for whatever reason, the way Amon Amarth does it, it works really, really well for them and what they're trying to do. But this record, vocals are kind of louder than everything. They're really showcasing his voice on this record. And they really do a great job of making a more palatable... They do a really great job of making a more palatable version of what they do, for the masses. And it's no joke that this was kind of the biggest, their biggest breakthrough over, internationally.
And it definitely sounds like an audible improvement on the previous records. The ideas are still there, the composition is still there, but somebody spent a lot of time making this record sound good. And it's really the first time it doesn't sound like an old school metal record.
Yeah, this definitely felt like they were taking their sound and modernizing it, but they did not lose anything that makes them them. And I think that's what helps make this album just... There is one song on this album for everybody, and it will sink its teeth into you and not let go.
Oh,
and for like us, it was Cry the Blackbirds, and like in the past year or so, I've really attached runes to my memory for some reason. I popped on a shuffle while I was hacking away at vines that were growing on this tree, and I'm like, this is just the best thing ever. So I just put that on repeat for like an hour.
This is my vine cutting song.
Yeah, I mean, it's go by with Oden on our side. It's a sure thing. You're gonna love it.
Don't tell me how to spend my money.
This is the first Amon Amarth album or not even Amon Amarth, I would say one of the most accessible melodic death metal records. It's not like the most brutal death metal or technical death metal that exists out there, but this is the record that a kid hears that's not familiar with the style and is like, ooh, I really like this. And that's what gets them into stuff. But it's not cheap or hollow, like some of the more like, because we kind of tend to shit on like gateway bands. And I don't think that Amon Amarth is a gateway band, but I do think that this record in particular is more of a gateway record. It's a record that if you are able to get past the growling vocals, then it's going to open you up to an entire world of music like this. I think that's one of the most exciting things about this band, because when Amon Amarth came out, a lot more here in the States, a lot of dudes were suddenly like way more into Viking shit than they used to be. And obviously dudes started growing beards. I remember like in the Midwest, it was huge. Like everybody was like growing beards and wearing like little like Norse necklaces and stuff. Like the band actually kind of was a little bit of a phenomenon over here. Now, of course, none of those dudes would admit that they got into Norse mythology because of Amon Amarth, because that wouldn't be the cool thing to say. But we all know it's because you heard Cry of the Blackbirds and it made you feel special, and you decided that you were Viking. And I get it. I went through the exact same thing. That's why I still have a beard, but I'm a grown ass man.
Well, if I could grow a beard, I would. I've tried, but you don't want to see that.
You could just bend over and draw a face on your ass.
Hey, there you go.
How do you know he hasn't?
Accomplish the same task.
How do you know he hasn't? You don't know.
It's the wolf, man.
You don't know. All right, so Twilight of the Thunder God.
Hang on.
Hey, Twilight of the Thunder God.
I picked a bad time to make Buddy laugh. I like that you said that this record can open the door for a new melodic metal fan, because the vocals specifically, no matter how harsh they are mild in comparison to some of the other records that were coming out at this time.
Yeah, I agree, because like Dan was saying earlier, with him, with Johan going more into the deeper register, he somehow becomes more understandable. And since the songs are more mid-pace for the most part, with certain exceptions, he's definitely more understandable throughout the entire record. And it's a lot easier to then pick up on what he's saying and get into the theme. And then with the band just being so melodic while not losing any of that heaviness, it's, it definitely, I could see that catching on with someone, vocals or not, because I could even see that as being, since his vocals are mild, potentially getting them into more extreme vocals later, because they catch on to Johan's vocals and really, dig it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is one of those things too, that if you really listen to it, you can be like, yeah, it's all growly and stuff, but like the music actually sounds really good and kind of really gets under your skin. And that was perfectly crafted. And I think like when you get to Twilight of the Thunder God, like at this point, this band is like completely unstoppable.
2008.
They're unstoppable on this one because they have a new legion of fans from with Oden on our side. They're a band that is on a whole nother level at this point in their career.
Yeah, I mean, even IGN has a review for this album. Like, really? video game website is covering, a Swedish death metal band.
Yep. Because it's just too cool. We can't let it go. The Viking aspect of having your own Viking themed death metal band really caught on for Amon Amarth that in a way that Egypt for Nile did not. So it's one of those.
Now that you mention that, buddy, it's not that far a step to go from God of War in 2008 to Norse mythology.
Yeah, it's really not. Like, it makes tons of sense. Yeah.
If you're all, go ahead.
I would say just with Thor and everything, I think people were also very interested in Thor at that time, which also kind of led to like, well, here's this death metal album that's also talking about Thor. Like, I think for some people it was almost just part of the wave and interest in the God of Thunder.
Yeah, and I think Joe hits a good point that with like God of War, having been a super successful video game franchise that got people into looking into Greek mythology and stuff like that, and then you end up just crossing over into Norse mythology and other mythologies, and a lot of that Norse mythology is pretty cool. And so then you find, you start looking up Thor, and then this pops up, and you're like, this is awesome.
Yep.
They should make a movie about him.
Just wait a couple of years.
Right, yeah. That's what I'm saying. They'll make a movie about him at some point.
They'll even make a God of War game where he just jumps from Greek into Norse.
I like that. I like that Twilight of the Thunder God has the singer from Entombed doing vocals on a track, on the opening track, actually, Twilight of the Thunder God. And I think that, like, at this point the band could do whatever they want. And good thing for us that what all Amon Amarth wants to do is sing melodic death metal songs about Norse mythology. That's like literally all they want to do, Some girls, they want to have fun. Some girls, they just want to have lunch. Some Swedish death metal bands just want to talk about Vikings. And that's okay. Like, that's perfectly fine. This is a band that really never sold out in the traditional sense. They just got as good, they just got as big as they did just by sticking to their guns. Their battle axes. I mean, at this point, that's 10 years into releases, and if anything, songwriting quality has improved and production quality. Like, they are still the same, like, awesome band as the first time you heard them, and it's like a fresh box of chocolates every time you get a brand new album. Absolutely. And get a brand new album we did.
2011. Surtur Rising.
I love this record. My favorite part about it is whenever they talk about Norse mythology.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you consider that to be the highest point in the record or in the discography as a whole?
Well, I mean, if you know anything about Surtur, you'll know that, like, Surtur is this big, huge badass that it takes multiple warriors to take down.
Is he literally huge?
He's literally huge. He is the Goliath of Norse mythology. Surtur is a terrifying sight to behold, and you can actually see Surtur right there on the cover of the album, about to lay some smackdown on some poor bastards on some horses. It's really rough, and I feel really bad for him. I don't really hear a whole lot of improvement on the Amon Amarth sound, and that's kind of the only criticism that I do have. After With Oden on our side, the band kind of just became kind of the same. They kind of stopped having that improvement in songwriting, that improvement in production, and it's entirely possible that they just took it as far as they could go with it. But once it's your full-time job, then you just commit to it fully and just keep doing it, right? I mean, that's what any smart person would do. Yeah, I wonder if that's why, I think this is still a super great album. I, enjoy it, but this one just didn't, stick with me for some reason, because I've been listening to this one for a while, but it was never one that I typically would gravitate toward, because I never really felt like anything was as standout as Twilight of the Thunder God or Cry of the Blackbirds. There was no real single song that kind of jumped out at me like the previous albums.
Right. It's not a bad thing that the band is still writing melodic death metal songs about Vikings, but what you're getting is the classic metal record feel of, here are the songs for the next 45 minutes. You're going to like them, and when the record is done, you might listen to it again. but there's not one song, one riff that really stands out and pulls you back into this particular record. Now we're at the point where every record is going to give me what I want to hear when I listen to Amon Amarth, but very few are going to give me one specific thing that I reach for.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a problem going forward for the band, honestly. And it's not even a problem. I mean, this is where they start having fun. They do some cover songs on, as bonus tracks. So they even, Joe, did you happen to catch the Amon Amarth cover of Balls to the Wall by Accept?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Because I've got it pulled up right here.
It's actually not on this version. Let me see if it's on the other version.
It looks like it's only on this.
The version I had. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it says it's from the deluxe CD DVD bonus tracks. That I had to actually find this one on YouTube.
Yeah, the only one that I had access to was Aerials.
Aerials. Yep.
That was weird because I'm sitting here listening to it and like, yep, and then all of a sudden I'm like, why do I know this? But it doesn't sound like what I think I know, and completely forgot that they did that cover.
It's kind of like whenever I first heard Tourniquet by Evanescence after realizing it was My Tourniquet by Soul Embraced. And
yeah, for real.
Except it was in reverse. I heard the death metal version first.
Which was way better. Thank you very much.
I think I was sitting there the day you heard that. You had about 2 minutes of, don't I know this song? And then immediately went full red face rage. Like, no. Rocket Gray did not let this happen.
Look at how they massacred my boy.
Massacred my boy.
Yeah. Oh.
Balls to the Wall is one of the best one-hit wonders of all time. I actually think the first record by Accept is a very solid metal record in the 80s. Unfortunately, the band did not have a second Balls to the Wall. But if you're going to play Balls to the Wall, and you're going to play it the way Amon Amarth plays it, this is what everybody wishes Accept had kept doing at this point. Because this is one of those songs. Yes, it's on. Okay, yeah, we're going to fucking dance. Balls to the Wall. Hell yes. This is a welcome departure for me from the Viking Metal. But at the same time, I think this is what it would sound like if Vikings were singing the song.
I mean, I think this is like a call right here to be like, please put out the cover album and just make everything in your own style, because it would be freaking awesome.
Cover albums are a waste of your time. Come on.
He refused. No. He would not listen to Copies, Clones, and Replicants after last week.
Yeah, by Power Man 5000. Yeah, I just refused. Just straight up refused. Deceiver of the Gods.
Covered all of it.
Still no. It's a no for me, dog.
2013, Deceiver of the Gods.
That's right. We're back, baby. This bitch was produced by Andy Sneap.
Is that why it sounds so cohesive and awesome and has songs about Vikings?
It's not why the songs are about Vikings, but it is why the album sounds so good. This sounds great. I don't necessarily think that they're really reinventing the wheel here, or reinventing the Viking boat, or whatever it is that Vikings use, whatever the name of the ship is. But I will say that, like, it's starting to get a little exhausting with this band. But it's only exhausting because of the way we did it. It's exhausting because we listened to all of these records in a short period of time, one after the other. And unfortunately, that just starts making stuff sound like it's running together. If you are a hardcore fan of Amon Amarth, you get a new record every couple years, and the only record that you listened to before that new one came out in the time between was that old record. So you've got it worn out. All the songs are different. So in 2 or 3 years, when another record comes out, you buy that new record, and then that becomes the songs you listen to for the next 2 to 3 years. Because the band is still consistently giving you what you want, then you're going to totally be fine with it as long as it's like in intervals. So whenever I say exhausting, I only mean it's exhausting to consume it the way that we had to consume it in order to do the show. If you're waiting for these records to come out and listening to them in the normal time frame, you're not going to feel that way. It's not a slam on the band or anything like that. I feel like these guys are just legitimately, unironically doing what they want to do.
And it sounds really fucking good.
It sounds really fucking good. That's right.
Yeah, can't understate that. It's again another solid record. I mean, apparently About.com described it as a letdown, but I mean, even quote unquote Amon Amarth's Letdown is better than your favorite band's record. So, we can leave it at that. I mean, there's still some great catchy songs on here, and I couldn't describe it as a letdown or anything by these guys. This is another great album with a solid mix of songs.
Absolutely. One of the best, for sure. I don't know if the gods were deceived or not, but, here we are.
But they were definitely metal moshing outside in the crowd.
Well, and I think too that, we are reaching a point with this band where the stories that are being told in the songs maybe take a little bit more precedence to the fans than necessarily the music itself. Because, like, as music critics, I'm sitting there being like, I like this riff, I don't like this riff, I like this one, I don't like this one, that solo sucks, that solo's awesome. That's what I'm listening to whenever I'm listening to these records. But I feel like as a fan, when a new Amon Amarth record comes out, you're not looking for it to reinvent the wheel, like, musically. You're like, oh man, what are they talking about this? Like, I feel like you should earn a college credit in mythology by listening to Amon Amarth, because you do actually learn a whole lot of really cool and interesting stuff. And so I think that's really what the appeal is at this point, is that the music's not going to, like, win you over or change your life, but you are going to care about the themes of the songs. It's like Blind Guardian. I don't love every Blind Guardian song, but, like, I might like one that talks about a book I like, or something like that. And I feel like it's very much the same way with Amon Amarth. I feel like if you're a diehard fan, then you want to hear more about, a specific deity in that, in that mythology. But you also get some rockin' tunes to go with it. I think it's a whole thing now. It's like a theater project. It's not necessarily just a band writing riffs that they think are going to sound good. Now it's like, we're going to take a theme, we're going to run with it. We're not necessarily going to make, like, concept albums, but we're just going to take a theme, we're going to run with it, we're going to make it interesting, and we're going to make it, like, always fascinating. And I think that they do that really, really well with these albums.
2016, Jom's Vikings.
Okay, everything that I just said is pretty much the same thing.
Let me grab the time machine, go back to 5 minutes ago, and get 5 minutes ago Dan to come tell me how he feels about this one.
Okay. And this is how I feel about Jom's Viking.
It's a record by Amon Amarth, produced by Andy Sneap, and it sounds exactly like what you're expecting. If you want songs about Vikings that are melodic with double bass and heavy melodic guitars, you're going to get that. I'm sure there's more to these records from the mythology standpoint. If I was reading the lyrics word for word and trying to follow with the story, then I might find more here than what I am personally seeing. But I don't think that these records have a concept where it's focusing on a story or an idea or something that the band adapted, fabricated, put together and said, this is what our record is going to be about. I'm sure every single one of these albums means something to them, but I'm just getting more of the same with this one.
This one actually is a concept album.
But wait a minute, Dan. I thought that Vikings were the entire concept.
They are, though. I mean, this is still very much about Vikings, but this is technically their first concept record. There is a story. It's like a love story. I mean, it's all still taking place in the fucking world of the Vikings, but this one actually does follow a storyline with the lyrics and all of that. But, like, I understand where Joe's coming from in that if you're really not paying attention to that, you're not going to pick up on that. There are some interludes. There are some interludes and stuff, but yeah.
I definitely didn't pick up on it. Until I re-listened to it and then looked up some info about it just to, see more behind the scenes stuff. Because I'm still, even though I really enjoy this band, I'm still, more of a passive, casual fan. I'm almost 40 years old, so I don't pore over all the interviews and blah, blah, blah that bands do. I just, new album's out, great, I'm going to listen to it. And so I look up that this is a concept album. It's like, oh, interesting. I had no idea.
What else you got this week?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that finally brings us to an album, that was hinted in the first Clerks movie called Berserker. My love for you is like a truck berserker.
No, not that Berserker. The album by Amon Amarth.
Come on.
but it's Berserker. Look at that. Look at his face. That's his metal face. All right, that's enough quoting Kevin Smith movies. But so yeah, we're 11 albums in, man. I'm just gonna say this for hopefully the last time in this.
Don't forget about your final thoughts
in this episode. This is a album by Amon Amarth. It is done in a style of melodic death metal. The songs are about Norse mythology and Vikings. It's great. You're gonna memorize the riffs. You're gonna love it. You're gonna soak in the album. It's gonna make you feel very empowered. You're gonna cut the grass faster than everybody in your neighborhood.
Hell yeah.
But that's it. This band is this is one of those bands where like I'd love to shit on them for not being super innovative, but
they're really fucking solid.
They're really fucking solid. Like it's a sure thing.
Every single thing is entertaining to listen to, and if what you want to hear is melodic death metal, you're gonna get it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason Coca-Cola came out with new Coke and had to go back.
But Amon Amarth would have knocked that new cola out of their hand and been like, no, just do the thing that you set out to do.
And drink Royal Crown.
Definitely drink Royal Crown. But yeah, I mean, that's Amon Amarth, people. They're a fantastic band, I guess is what we're trying to say. And I would say in the future, definitely expect more of the same. You're gonna be
They've
fine.
Given us no reason to expect otherwise.
They're what every unpleasable metal fan wants, is a band that never changes and always does the thing that they want you want them to do.
But it's so good, you also then like unpleasable metal fan then can't really complain because it still sounds fantastic.
Is that a challenge?
Believe me, unpleasable metal fan can complain.
I could find something to complain about.
That is exactly why he's unpleasable.
Let's see it. Bring it, Dan.
Oh, I got this.
Ladies and gentlemen, unpleasable metal fan.
The vocals are too deep. He should go back to the black metalish style on the first couple of records. And like honestly, with Oden on our side has like choruses. Like what the hell is up with that? Like, are they some kind of like weird fucking pop rock band now? Like, I don't understand. Like, I didn't used to think that my girlfriend would listen to Amon Amarth, but I guess now my girlfriend, I mean, if I actually had a girlfriend, would actually listen to this band. They're like a teeny bopper band. I mean, honestly, at this point, they need to just go on tour with In Flames and just get it over with.
And that's your trailer for the episode.
How was that? Was that pretty unpleasable? I think we need to start. I think we need to start adding an unpleasable metal fan segment into every episode. Because all you have to do is just come up with the most random shit that you could possibly say and be like, yep, that's my opinion on it. And it works because it's different than what everyone else's opinion is. You love it.
It has to mean something.
Very well.
Final thoughts on Amon Amarth. Buddy.
I mean, we've said it basically for the past hour. Like, just pick up any album, whichever one, throw a dart at a wall. I don't care. Maybe I do care. Pick Oden on our side. It's friggin' amazing. Anything that you pick up by these guys is going to be a great listen. And yeah, just sit there and enjoy this band.
Dan, what about you?
Fucking Vikings, dude. Like, let's do it. Like 100%. No, this band is awesome. Check them out. You can listen. You can start with whatever record you want. But like I said, probably just start, like Buddy said, like just start with Oden on our side. If you like that, you're going to be in for a good time. If you hate that, you might want to go back and just listen to Clayman re-recorded by In Flames.
Don't do that to yourself.
Well, if you hate this, then you obviously don't like music.
I really like Amon Amarth when I'm listening to the band. There is not one thing that they do that brings me back to them, but I do come back to this band because I enjoy listening to them. I enjoy the solid melodic death metal experience that I'm getting, and consistently I'm getting that on every single record. The band really does not misstep. A melodic death metal purist may say that the single bait was their misstep, but for me, I don't agree. If the band did anything, they spent more time creating more solid audio experiences, and you're not going to fail if you pick up any record in the discography and that is your introduction to this band. You are absolutely going to be entertained. So listen to Amon Amarth. Dan, what's your album of the week?
My album of the week is With Oden on Our Side by Amon Amarth. Got stuck on it.
Buddy, what about you?
So I could echo the sentiment, but I'm not going to. because I always spin Oden on our side. So I'm going to say Once Sent from the Golden Hall, because that really surprised me with the 2009 remaster, how awesome that record actually is.
Arden Lopez, man.
For me, it's Tyrant of Death, Nuclear, Nanosecond. Because when the Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal soundtrack is not enough, just listen to Tyrant of Death. Take us out, DFT.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Discography Discussion. If you like what we do on Discography Discussion, leave us a review on whatever podcast app that you use to listen to our show. If you want to reach out to us for any reason, including band requests, interview requests, or you just want to say hello, you can send us an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on Twitter at discussmetal, on Facebook under Discography Discussion. You can join our Discord server. There will be a link in the show notes that'll take you right to our Discord server. If you want to get yourself some sweet Discography Discussion merch, you can head over to our Teespring store. There will be a link to that in our show notes. If you'd like to become a Patreon subscriber, you can do that at patreon.com/discussmetal. I have heard that we have some sweet perks. And
we do, Dan.
Oh, awesome. Then I wasn't misinformed. Fake news isn't real. If you just absolutely cannot get enough of the sound of my voice, I do stream on Twitch 2 times a week on Mondays and Thursday evenings at 10:30 Central Standard Time. I play a variety of different games, so if you want to come by and say hi, definitely do so. We have a lot of fun on there. So with all that out of the way, we will see you guys next time on Discography Discussion.
And on that note, this has been episode 193 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Give me your money.
Good show, guys.
Yep.
There we go.
I'm out of here.